As you travel through the furthest reaches of the galaxy, you pick up a distant transmission. Signal received. Decrypting message.
Welcome to Starchives, presented by Starforce Collective, a crew of spacefaring illustrators on a mission to record nerdy shit for the hope of future generations. Hello, welcome back to Starchives, your cosmic library of everything geeky and nerdy. This is your commander speaking. As always, I'm Alex Rodway. What's going on, man?
Hey, this is Hunaid. No,
No,
it's
but
going
seriously,
well.
it's
Yeah,
Hunaid
but seriously,
Taj.
it's not. Yeah, it's not Taj. I'm actually really here. I'm not Waluigi.
Yeah,
No,
he
my favorite.
is not a baked potato. Hunaid, what are we talking about today, man? Tell me.
Man, we spent so many hours doing the same thing in this thing. Mostly just dying and then coming back to life, and then dying and then coming back to life.
Oh, are you talking about Buddhism?
Oh no, it has nothing to do with reincarnation and attaining nirvana.
Oh?
We're talking about the hard frustration that comes from the From Software games.
Oh, you're talking about the Dark Souls series.
Yeah, the Blood Souls, or as they're called.
The Dark Bloody Soul series.
Yeah.
How do you feel about these games, Hunaid? How many have you played, by the way?
So I've played.
What's your history with the Souls series?
So I've played the first Dark Souls. So I played Dark Souls 1 when it came out many years ago.
Any Demon Souls action?
No, that was PS3 exclusive, and I did not own a PS3.
Fair enough. Okay, so we're talking Dark Souls and beyond.
Yes, and that includes Bloodborne. So I played the first Dark Souls, and more recently I just picked up Dark Souls 3. So I kind of just skipped Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne.
Okay.
Though I did not finish the first game.
No?
No.
Well, I mean, understandably, it's fucking hard.
It's a time investment, and
Yes.
they're really tough games. Yeah.
And it's funny. You kind of run into. I've heard it described as you run into a wall with these games where, you know, if you haven't experienced them before, and you know, it doesn't really matter how good you are at video games beforehand. You could be a master, and then suddenly Dark Souls will just kick you in the nuts and then toss you off a cliff.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, try again, asshole. And that's kind of the experience. Is you are not ready when you play Dark Souls.
You're not prepared enough.
Just aren't. You are not prepared.
Even now, like I picked up Dark Souls 3 recently.
Oh yeah.
And after, I guess it must have been like 2 or 3 years, because we were back in Sheridan when I played the first Dark Souls game.
You actually played it before me.
Yeah.
You're the one who convinced me to buy it, actually, because we were gonna play online, and then
We figured out that you couldn't do that.
You can't do that.
But
very
you
well.
can with Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 because of a password system, so you're more likely to get matched up with a person with the same password. So that might be something that we could do in the future.
Cool. We'll do that. Starforce. We'll do Star Souls.
Well, we're definitely going to try and do some Let's Play content in the near future. We're just sort of getting our hands on some equipment, some hardware to make that possible.
Yeah, we're currently outfitting our engine thrusters with video game capacities.
We're gonna build a holodeck.
We're upgrading our Game Boy engine into something a little more current gen. So we don't just have a mess of link cables back there in the engine
Oh
room.
man, yeah. No, we want high resolution graphics.
Oh, we want that sweet
1080p,
480p,
480p natural.
4x3 aspect ratio.
Oh yeah.
Ah, that's so
So
good.
good.
The little black bars on top and bottom. Anywho, Dark Souls 1 I played when it was recommended to me not only by you but by my brother-in-law Theo, our very own Navigator Jen's husband. He is possibly the most into the Souls series I've ever seen a person. He has platinumed Demon's Souls on
Right.
the PS3, and that's something I didn't think was possible because you have to do everything. And I'm talking about everything.
I've noticed that Theo also plays a lot of roguelikes, like The Binding of Isaac.
Yes.
Which has a very similar mentality where it's a hard game, and when you die, you start over and you lose all your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a class of video game which is very challenging and doesn't pull any punches.
And that's definitely for sure with the Souls series. I mean, it was strange because I really hadn't had any exposure to Dark Souls basically before I played it. Like I hadn't really looked up any videos. I may have seen a trailer, probably even maybe not. All I knew about it was kind of the box art and a relatively like kind of it's like sword and sorcery, kind of sounds cool. All right, cool, I'll pick
like
it.
A fantasy RPG kind of thing.
So I get it for Christmas a few years ago, and I started playing, and I made the classic mistake which everybody makes in Dark Souls, and that's go to the graveyard first and get immediately wrecked by skeletons.
Yeah.
And after that, I think I forget which game it was, but I had gotten another game at the same time.
It might have been Mass Effect 3.
No, it wasn't that.
Okay.
But I remember around Christmas time, I was distracted by a second game that I had gotten, so I just put Dark Souls on the back burner. Didn't touch it for a while. Didn't touch it for like 8 months. Yeah. Then I was like, you know what? I haven't played in a while. Dark Souls. I'm going to pick that up again. And I think part of why I hadn't played it for so long was that I was actually frightened of the game. I was like, I don't know if I can play this. Like, it's really hard. And it's a very intimidating challenge of a game because, as you said, it doesn't pull its punches. And it doesn't forgive you if you die. Because if you play smart, chances are you will be able to survive a lot of what happens. Like, it gives you chances and opportunities to survive, like, the things that happen to you.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's getting better, but as a generation of gamers, we're very used to a lot of games kind of like leading you through the story and like, you know, oh, if you die, it's okay, just go back to the checkpoint, try again. Dark Souls is like, yeah, if you die, you can go back to the checkpoint, but you lose all the experience you accrued, and you have to fight everything again. And, you know, like, we'll give you a chance to get all your XP back, but if you die on the way, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't hold your hand at all.
No. But the rewarding thing about the game, and this is what appeals to me, it doesn't appeal to everybody, this is certainly not a game for everybody, but what appeals to me about it is that when you do succeed and, you know, you get that victory achieved, or in Bloodborne's case, prey slaughtered after you defeat a boss or something particularly challenging, it feels really good because, you know, I did that. The game didn't help me. The game did fucking nothing to help me. I did that. And then you feel a sense of accomplishment. Yeah. And it better informs the character that you're playing as like this kind of badass that's growing into the hero.
Yes.
Of the tale, as dark and as soulsy as it may be. I found this to be especially the case when I was playing, because I recently finished Bloodborne. I was a little late to the game because I didn't get my PS4 till last year, but whatever. Super great. Bloodborne's really awesome. I love it. And one of the coolest things that you can do is revisit an area that gave you trouble when you were a lower level, and then going back as an over-leveled badass and just like sweeping it clean. Like, all of the enemies stay the same level, they stay the same strength, they don't scale up with you.
Yeah.
What changes is when as you progress through the game, the areas get more difficult, and the enemies within those areas advance and evolve, and that's how it becomes harder.
Yeah, they respond faster, they have more health, more armor, you know, there's more of them.
They have different abilities. Like, there's this one particular kind of enemy, which kind of reminds me of the Beholders from D&D, but they're like weird brain monsters.
Right.
And they have an ability called Frenzy, where it basically charges up a frenzy meter, and then once it fills up, just basically all of your health gets taken away. And if you don't have high enough health, you die just instantly, insta-kill. And like this type of ability is something that cannot be dodged. So all of your cool physical abilities that you've been honing throughout this game before, completely useless to you now, because you have to figure out a way to kill the enemy before that effect kills you, or to increase the resistance towards this type of effect.
Right.
Like, these types of games, they reward you for getting good at a particular playstyle, but then they also reward you for adapting that playstyle to be different. Like using different equipment based on different bosses and what kinds of strengths that they may have. Or
Like, I definitely have a play style for the Souls games.
as do I. Yeah.
And, you know, my preferred is Shield and Spear.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely a very defensive play because the spears don't necessarily do a lot of damage, which I'm finding out in Dark Souls 3.
Right.
So, you know, when I was playing Deprived, I
God.
put the game, I put in, you know, I was like, well, let's test this game out, see what it's like, and I went to Deprived, which is a character with, that starts at level 1,
Yep.
has no armor.
No armor, no equipment.
And their weapons are basically a club and a plank of wood as a shield.
Yep.
And the only item that I took was the life ring.
Right. Give you a little more health.
Give me just a tiny smidge more health so I wouldn't get completely destroyed right off the bat.
Right.
And it was a challenging play because, you know, when you block, you don't mitigate 100% of the damage, so you still take damage to your health.
Even with other classes, it's the case too. Like, because like you, I like playing a particular kind of character. I gravitate towards tanks that can also heal themselves.
Yeah.
And that's usually the cleric. I just pretend it's called paladin, whatever. But like you, the starting shield for that class only negates about 60% damage. So you have to be smart with how many blows you block and how many you dodge.
Yeah.
That being said, when I do eventually pick up Dark Souls 3, I'm going to fall back into my old habits of, as soon as I can get a tower shield with 100% physical blocking, I am going to get it. And I'm going to make sure I have the preferred stats to be able to wield it with one arm.
That's the great thing about the Herald class, because you start with a shield that blocks 100% physical damage.
Oh, excellent.
So
I may have to
you
be
don't
that,
do as much damage. Like, that's your trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Boss fights can be a little bit more drawn out because you're very slowly whittling them down.
Sure.
But you have 100% frontal defense while you attack.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as your stamina doesn't run out, you're okay. You
Yeah.
can block pretty much anything.
Yeah, stamina management is an interesting thing that's always been a staple of the Souls series. And it's interesting how different it is just going between Dark Souls and Bloodborne.
Mm-hmm.
As Bloodborne, if you run out of stamina, I mean, you can't attack for like a split second.
Right.
Whatever, you can just kind of run around, whatnot. Stamina recharges really fast in Bloodborne.
Well, you also don't have the ability to block. There are no
Correct.
shields.
But, you know, I tried out Dark Souls 3 when you came over last, and it was definitely weird because I was like, cool, I'm like, I know how to dodge now, like Bloodborne taught me that, and then suddenly I was running out of stamina all the time because, you know, Bloodborne is interesting because most of the characters act kind of like Dragon Ball Z characters where, you know, you're like flipping around, like dodging left and right, and you don't really have to worry about conserving stamina too much in that game.
Right.
But then Dark Souls is a hardier, more patient kind of game. Like, you almost have to play it more patiently and like wait for your opportune moment to strike.
I think the best description that I heard was by Yatsu Croshaw. He does zero punctuation.
Yep.
And, you know, he described one as being more of like a run and gun style, whereas a little bit, you know, like Bloodborne is very fast. Like, the action, the movements, like the pacing of the game is a lot faster than the Dark Souls games, which are a little bit more methodical. And you don't necessarily always get to attack between, you know, your opposition's attack cycles. Sometimes you just have to wait it out and, you know, find your opportune moment. And I think that has to do with like the whole sword and board versus not.
Yes.
Right. Because you have that, you know, defense available to you.
You have a line of defense that is there for you to use, And it's strongly recommended, particularly for new players, that as soon as you start Dark Souls, you get a motherfucking shield. Because chances are you're going to need it.
Yeah. It makes a difference. Once you sort of get into the habit of, how enemies attack, you can two-hand the weapon. Like,
oh, sure.
Some enemies at this point, I haven't put a lot of time in it. I've essentially played the entry, like the prologue. I went and did an optional boss at the start of the game, and then since then, it's in that territory where there's a point where I'm stuck, and I know I've seen what this creature is. You can defeat them. They have a two-phase sort of system where one is very easy. They're just a hollow or an ashen, as they're called. And if you wait too long, a giant goo monster comes out of them, and they become exponentially harder to kill. So it's the same thing like from that sort of first boss you fight in Dark Souls 3, where you draw the sword out and this thing comes out after a certain point.
Yes.
But this is like right away. So if you don't kill them within like the first couple seconds, the fight gets way harder. And I'm sort of stuck there because you're fighting on a very small environment as well for that little sequence.
And that's a good segue into the environments of these games, because they are probably the main character of the Souls and Bloodborne series, is the environments. Like, the environments let you know more about the story of the game than any of the flavor text, any of like the few conversations you may have with other characters. The environments in these games are almost always fantastically designed. Dark Souls 2 is a little weak.
One of the main things I heard about Dark Souls, like, because I haven't played it, but
Dark Souls 2, you mean?
Dark Souls 2 is that the environments feel disjointed.
Yes.
That it's not like you look over the horizon.
They feel like levels of a game, whereas Dark Souls 1 is almost perfectly designed, where you start out at Firelink Shrine. There's the cemetery off to one side. There's the cliffway. There's the cliff stairway leading to the Undead Burg, and then there's the elevator leading down into the depths. New Londo, yeah. And what's great is, like,
you can go any direction you want. The game won't stop you.
And the game doesn't necessarily punish you for going in the wrong direction. It just lets you know what the wrong direction is by the difficulty of the enemies. Like, obviously, everyone makes the mistake of going to the graveyard first. Because why not? It's there. But it's not really punishing, because it's really, really close to the bonfire.
Yeah.
So if you die, whatever, it's like 3 seconds to run over there.
They're essentially like the first enemies you might encounter once you come to Firelink Shrine.
They were for me.
Same, yeah.
And, like, as soon as you realize that, oh shit, these guys are really tough, not only, but if you pass through miraculously through the graveyard without dying, and you start to go deeper into the catacomb area, you start realizing that the skeletons aren't dying.
They come back.
And they come back. And that's when you start realizing, maybe I'm in the wrong place, and maybe I should try a different direction. And that's great. That's called exploration. And that's a great way of telling a story without telling a story. It's like, okay, this is a place that I'm going to go to, but not until I'm stronger. So I'm going to go this way. And, like, the enemies over here are a little more manageable. They're a little easier to deal with. Instead of taking 8 hits to beat, they only take 3 maybe. And I'm finding I can progress a lot better. And in doing that, it makes you feel as a player that you made the active choice to go in that direction, even though the game was kind of steering you to go that way. No,
well, it's not like there are invisible walls or level caps. But essentially, there is a boundary where it's like, if you're not a specific level or your gear isn't strong enough, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna have a bad time.
Yes. And I mean, with the exception of a couple locked doors that you need the emblem of Artorias to get through here, but there's nothing stopping you from amassing the amount of souls that you need to get through there.
Yeah.
It just, depending on what level you are, 10,000 souls, if you're level, like, 15, that's a lot of souls, because that's, like, probably 10 to 15 levels. But if you're level, like, 55 or something, you're like, all right, let's go through there. 10,000 souls. I can probably spend.
Well, you get more souls as you fight more difficult enemies as well, right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
Whereas a regular undead enemy might only give you something like 30. Fighting and killing one of those optional bosses, or even a tougher enemy. Like if I let that undead transform, they give you like 2,000 souls.
Really?
When you kill them.
Oh,
but the fight
that's
is much tougher.
Okay.
So, and I mean, like it's way harder.
That's cool. I like that.
So there's benefits of doing it that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And these creatures will come back if you have to restart too, right? So you can choose to farm them if you want.
Yep. And I actually I usually don't. Actually, Dark Souls 2 was a real farming game for me because
they didn't have the thing where like if you cleared the area enough times, the enemies would stop spawning.
10 times.
10 times.
Yeah.
But you could do something at the shrine to get them to spawn again.
Yeah, you could. You raise the bonfire intensity,
right.
Which effectively between whatever bonfires are there, that section becomes a lot harder.
Okay.
Or one level harder.
So by leveling it up, you're essentially leveling up the creatures in that area.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that something that they have in Dark Souls 3?
They do have a level up system on the fires. Like you can burn bone fragments.
But are the enemies like?
I haven't put enough hours to really be able. Like I'm having a difficult time with some of the.
I'm wondering if there is permadeath because there isn't in Bloodborne. And considering Bloodborne came after Dark Souls 2, if I'm correct, that's an interesting choice. Because I definitely, in the DLC for Bloodborne, there's an area called the Research Hall where you fight these patients in like straitjackets, and they've got like weird brain heads. Yeah. They're all gooey and stuff, but they're pretty easy to kill. And I found if I equipped certain runes, that boost the amount of blood echoes that you get per enemy kill.
Right.
I could get like 2,000 per enemy, and doing like a quick run between two lanterns, I could level up maybe like 5 or 6 times in an hour maybe. And I mean, at the level that I am now, I'm over level 100 at this point.
Right.
You need like fucking 60,000 souls to fucking level up once.
Right. There is a meta. There's a meta to the game which suggests that you don't want to level your character beyond a certain point because you essentially start hitting diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. You don't get as much benefit out of leveling at that point. Also, for the co-op play or even competitive play when you're doing PvP, it's harder to find other players to play with if you sort of are beyond the level sort of gap.
That's true.
There's a lot of like really smart engineering in the game in the way that sort of maximize,
It's
like,
extremely balanced, I think is a good word.
Well, the game's not unfair. It's challenging. It's not unfair. It doesn't hold your hand like we said, but it also doesn't like. One of the big issues with Dark Souls 1, where I spent a lot of time in that graveyard because I didn't know what to do, was because I didn't know where to go. There are conversations you can have with characters, and even in Dark Souls 3 that happened where between where you start and the Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls 3, you can't really go anywhere else. Like there's no physical connection to any other place.
Right.
So I didn't realize that until I talked to the Shrine Keeper.
So wait, you had to physically warp to another location?
You had to go to the shrine to warp into the next area. But
that's odd. It's
not a linear path, but the Firekeeper tells you that if you stop fast forwarding through the dialogue. Right, which is sort of like a habit that you get into when you're like, you're talking, I don't care, just let me play the game.
Yeah.
Like Pokemon is an example of how many times you read any of the conversations that happen.
Sure, but to chide you a little bit, Hunaid, the conversations in these games are extremely well written and voice acted, and chances are it's almost always important.
Yes.
Like there really isn't a wasted line. Like even stuff that seems throwaway. I'll use Bloodborne as an example. There's certain houses and windows that you can knock on and interact with the NPCs that are inside, and even NPCs that just tell you to fuck off, basically, they inform the story. Not necessarily as anything particularly practical,
Right.
But as you progress through Bloodborne's story, you defeat a certain boss, and then the moon, like the phase of the moon changes, so it's higher in the sky and it becomes midnight. So the entire kind of scenery of the game changes ever so subtly.
Right.
And characters that would have been there before would be like, "Oh, you're that new hunter, hey? Well, step off then. I don't want nothing to do with you." Suddenly, if you go back after that phase shift, you might just hear like, thanks,
You're
hon.
falling into madness.
Yeah, essentially. And if you go back again when it turns into the nightmare, you might just hear, it might just say no response.
Right.
And then the implication is that they're dead. But this is a way, this is a method of storytelling that shows that you are progressing and that things are getting worse. And I mean, there's a few NPCs that you can rescue.
Right.
And it warrants multiple playthroughs because there's 2 areas that you can send them to. That you can either send them to Isefka's clinic or the Odeon Chapel. And on my first playthrough, I'm on New Game Plus now, but my first playthrough, I sent them to the chapel. And as you find these people and say, yeah, go there, they show up and you can interact with them, and they have their own little stories.
Right.
And they almost always end badly because it's Bloodborne, and it's a even if you get the good ending, I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's like, really? Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, nothing
kind
really
of sucks.
It's like life. It's like, yeah, just because
It's
you
all
finished,
despair and misery.
doesn't mean that it's gonna end well overall. Just because you finished.
Yeah.
I definitely I appreciate that sentiment in games, since a lot of them end up being happy endings all around.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really there isn't a weight to most games.
And with like I'll speak on the 2 Dark Souls, the first 2 Souls games that I've finished. I've finished both of them. The main storyline anyway. Like there's things I'm sure I haven't done, or bosses I haven't defeated. But at the end of Dark Souls 1, you're confronted with a choice where when you defeat Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder, I think, or the Lord of the Flame, essentially you can choose to let the first flame die out and plunge the world into darkness, and it basically you condemn the world to die.
Right.
Or you take Gwyn's place as the new Lord of the Flame, and you keep it alive. And the implication is that character, should you choose to do that, becomes the next the next High King of Lordran, I believe is the land. Or no, it's called Drang Lake in Dark Souls 2. But the implication is that the player character from Dark Souls 1 becomes the king of the land in the second one and defeats the giants and goes across to a new continent, and
the cycle starts.
And eventually goes crazy because when you find him,
right,
he's just pacing around, dragging his sword around. He does not interact with you. Like, he doesn't even know that you're there, basically. You can go in and say hi and then leave. Like, he's not gonna attack. It's only after you encounter the queen and get some backstory about him that you realize the king kind of slowly went into madness and became a hollow again.
Right.
He's just a giant, like he's maybe like 9 or 10 feet tall, but he looks like the hollowed version of your character. Like, not specifically your character,
specifically, yeah.
But the resemblance is there. And you're like, it's kind of fucking interesting.
The game plays on cycles because, like, the third game, very much, it's essentially the same. The fire is dying. You have to rekindle the flame.
Yep.
You have to go collect the souls of the lords and then put them in the vessel, vessel, and it starts the cycle again.
And Bloodborne is very similar too.
Yeah, and they sort of follow that. There's the cycle. It just keeps refreshing, and certain characters are there again, but they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even in the trailer for Dark Souls 3, they reference as being the transitory place where different worlds. So there's a lot of theories. Like there's an entire YouTube channel where you know, you can watch aspects of lore and.
You talking about game theories?
Not game theories.
Okay.
It's called Vati Videos, I think.
I
And
haven't heard of
he
that.
deals specifically with like Blood Souls style games, so Bloodborne and Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't play Dark Souls 2 or Bloodborne, a lot of like the actual content and understanding that I have of the games is from from his channel and just watching Let's Plays. Because it's a very enjoyable game to watch. Like, yeah, it's more fun to watch someone who's good at it play it than someone like me who's awful. But it's still enjoyable regardless of whether they're good at it or not. It's that growth between, you know, starting and sort of getting to a place which is I think sort of like at the heart of the game, like as the game itself.
Right.
Like the game of it, not just the story.
Yeah. The story is not front and center in these games. It's very atmospheric.
Any information you want to learn is on the items or places that you visit. Like it's all accrued knowledge rather than a character, you know, giving you a monologue at the start of the game. You know, in the year 20XX, Dr. Light built Mega Man. And it's like, oh, okay.
And what's great about this kind of storytelling is it almost trains the player. I know I got that way. Whenever I picked up a new item, I would immediately open it up, look at what it looked like what is its appearance, and then read the flavor text to get information about it. Because no matter what it is, it could be a fucking pebble in Bloodborne. It's like used to throw at enemies, quite thrilling, and it's kind of like, you know, a little bit sassy, but you like I really like the outfits in Bloodborne. They're a little different than Dark Souls where you can't upgrade them. I mean, there's some variations on like, you know, like resistances and defenses and stuff, but mostly they're there simply to look cool.
Yeah.
And it actually helps your role playing because you encounter some interesting NPCs, and if you either kill them,
right,
or complete quest lines related to them, or other conditions that you meet, you can unlock their armor sets, and their weaponry, and you can essentially cosplay as them. But it helps kind of introduce you to role playing a type of character. Like right now in Bloodborne, I unlocked the Executioners set,
right,
and the Executioners were this cool band of former hunters started by a member of the Healing Church, and they swore to stamp out this race of vampires.
right.
And you meet one of them and you help him. You have the option of helping him do it. You unlock most of the armor beforehand. You find it
Right.
in a chest or something. But it's not until after you complete that quest that you get the option to buy the helmet, and the helmet looks really cool, and it's like the final piece.
Right.
And you're like, oh, now I'm gonna wear that. I'm gonna be an executioner. Cool, cool. And it's like, you know, these things are neat and they're interesting. And
They add flavor to the game.
Yeah.
Because beyond that, like it could be very much, you know, like Mass Effect's armor system is great. And they definitely, like, you know, different armor sets give you different sort of appeal, and they have different coloration depending on.
Excuse me.
They have a different appeal and different coloration depending on, you know, what company made them. I think
Yeah.
that was the lore.
Yeah. But you never really find out a whole lot about those companies, and they don't really have any character to them.
Exactly.
It's mostly about, oh, this piece of armor makes my shepherd look pretty sweet.
Yeah, a lot of games do that. Like, you know, Destiny does that, where they've recently had a thing where there are different gun manufacturers, and the weapons play differently depending on which manufacturer made them.
I think Borderlands does that.
Same
type
idea,
of thing
yeah.
The best, I think.
But theirs are like, it's a little bit off the rails, like what they do. Like one of them, it explodes after whenever you reload, you basically throw the gun and it explodes,
Yep,
and then you have
yep.
another one.
Yep.
Right? But you know, that's a mechanic. But when you start adding story to make it make more sense, it just makes it more valuable.
Yeah, and it also it makes you want to use these items because suddenly you have emotional investment in using them. Like even something that might not be that great, like it's like, it's a little weaker than my current weapon, but this character, it's like, it's really cool. You might just keep it around.
Exactly.
Like my favorite weapon in the game is a broadsword that turns into a greatsword by like ka-chunking it into the sheath, and the sheath itself is just a giant blade.
Right.
And
doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, it's very anime.
Yeah.
The whole game is very anime as well. But yeah, I recommend all of the games. If you haven't played any of the Souls games or Bloodborne, pick one up, give it a shot. You don't really have to go in order. I would recommend starting with Dark Souls 1. I think it's a very strong entry point.
They're better the more recent they are in terms of just overall handling and mechanics.
Right.
So my recommendation would be just pick up the most recent one. You can go back and play the others if you choose to.
Okay, that's fair.
But yeah, definitely, I would recommend it for somebody who enjoys sort of a brisk challenge in the game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it if you're not, if you get frustrated easily.
And you're not super like you want a really cool, like, involved story, it might not be the type of game for you. But if you enjoy a challenge, and if you enjoy really, really, really robust and like meaty combat, like really probably the best sword play combat I've ever seen in a game. It plays very realistic and at the same time very like fantastical and stuff. If that sounds cool, then yeah, give it a shot.
And there's tons of content online, especially on YouTube, for you to watch and decide whether it's a game that appeals to your sensibilities and style.
Sure. Yeah, because chances are, if you think it looks cool, then you're gonna want to play it because it all looks cool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop looking cool. It just keeps looking cool the further you go in the games.
It definitely it ups the ante every time.
Yeah. So I think that's where we'll leave you for this episode. 2 thumbs up for Dark Souls. 2 very, very sore thumbs up for Dark Souls and Bloodborne. One last note: be prepared to die. You will die a lot. In any case, I'm Commander Alex. You can find me at Lord_Lexan on Instagram and Twitter.
And I'm Hunaid Taj, and you can find me at Illustratorium on those sites as well.
All right. Thanks for joining us again for Starchives, guys. Peace out and have a good week. Take care.